Starzinger is a late 70s anime. It's pretty much a retelling of the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West with a sci-fi spin on things, where Jesse Dart is actually the Monkey King and the other main characters follow suit which they represent. It wouldn't be the first anime or last to borrow from the great novel. Princess Aurora and her 3 cyborg guardians must travel to the Decker system and restore the good energy that will get rid of all the space monsters and return them and the universe to their peaceful selves. That is at least the story in the dub version. The series was partly created by the legend that is Leiji Mastsumoto, who also created one of the most legendary animes in Space Battleship Yamato, along with Captain Harlock and Galaxy Express 999. You could make the argument that Starzinger is the least well known out of his works, but that doesn't take away from the show being good at all. The show was picked up for the Western market in the 80s, which is where I first got my hands on it. The crazy thing about Starzinger's Western release was that it had so many different names across the globe, along with different dubs and edits. For me living in the UK, the show was called Sci-Bots. I don't remember it ever airing on TV, and it was only ever released on VHS, which 13 volumes were released in total. This release never reached the end of the original Japanese show. I can remember begging my mum to buy the VHS. Keep in mind I never saw Starzinger before, but the front and back cover sold me. I just could not leave the shop without it. I cannot tell you how many times I rewatched this tape as a child over the years. I became an instant fan of Princess Aurora, Jesse Dart, Porcos and Aremos. Each character has their own gimmick weapons and moves, but I've always liked Kugo or Jesse Dart for me growing up. The Astral Pole weapon and the moveset, it reminded me of American Gladiators, which was a popular show in the late 80s as well. I used to love how when Jesse was done he would throw them up in the air and they would land in his pockets while he did a cool pose, and usually said something cool to boot too. I mean, how could you not like that whole set piece no matter how many times they did it? Another thing that I always found cool as a kid was Aremos' personal little computer, although to me back then I saw it as an advanced calculator. Whenever he gets stuck on how to handle the situation, he inputs some data and the computer comes up with the best answer. This thing would flash a whole bunch of images, one of which was a nice Easter egg of the Toei logo. Aurora would always see the good in the monsters and try to find a peaceful way of saving them. Jesse Dart on the other hand would also find a peaceful resolution to the problem at hand. And by peaceful I mean he would smash the place to bits and then kill everything in sight. He was certainly the wild one of the bunch. This is when the princess would put him in check by having a device on his head cause him great pain that he was tricked into putting on and cannot remove himself. So anytime he gets out of line, which is every episode, the princess would lay the smackdown. The show overall is like most kid shows and teaches the value of friendship, and even in this case love for another person. There's a lot of infighting, especially between Dart and Porcos, who love to eat a lot, but when the time comes they do actually have each other's backs. Now, even though the VHS I got was one of the later volumes, the episodes it uses from the original show is actually from episode 5 and 6. From what I found out, this whole UK VHS release took a mixture from the Japanese series episodes 1 to 30 something, turning that into the Sci-Bots we got here, meaning there's more than half the series left on the cutting room floor, keeping in mind the original Japanese show had a total of 73 episodes. This brings me nicely onto the other versions of the show out there. The show was quite popular in Sweden, where a total of 24 episodes were released. Now, how those were edited down from the original Japanese show I'm not 100% on, but I do believe the last few episodes do match up to give the same ending, unlike the UK dub. In Latin America, the show was called El Galáctico, which translates into the Galactic. This version had 24 episodes, and although having not watched this version, I'm not sure it follows the original Japanese version. In North America, the show was known as Spaceketeers, which was part of the Force 5 series, which was made up of other 1970s anime shows. I'm not sure that version reached a proper conclusion either. The only Western release that had the same exact lineup as the Japanese show was the Italian release, where they received the full 73 episode run. Due to its edits, you could somewhat say Starzinger was an incorrect anime for the Western market, barring Italy. Lucky the show was that good that it still kept its appeal, and of course watching it at the time, you'd have no idea there was far more to the show being kept away from you. Now, I don't have the time to research every anime out there, but I don't think I've seen an anime have that many different names and edits across the world. If Starzinger is not the top for that, then it surely is a contender. Starzinger really is a curious show to me because so many people experienced it in different ways and formats, yet the message and the feel of the show was the same, and whatever version you watched, it was an entertaining show. As always, thanks for watching and catch you next time.